Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be covering a topic that I wanted to talk about for quite a while now, since I really first started making YouTube videos, and that being my favorite Xenoblade cutscene of all time. This scene, I think, embodies what I love the most about the Xenoblade series, and I will be explaining why. So anyway, more than enough rambling, let's get right into it, shall we? So yeah, the cutscene we're going to be talking about today is currently playing right now with pretty good footage. I was able to screen record it, but that being the birth of a universe cutscene from Xenoblade 2 towards the ending of the game at the beginning of chapter 10. And there's just so much I love about this cutscene, but I think one of the key aspects that make it so good is just the music. You're going to be hearing it also in the background of this video, but the music that they made for this cutscene alone is breathtaking. It's very, you can tell, like, even if you just listen to the music, you can tell that this is supposed to be some sort of big decision made by someone or something, you know, on deciding a fate of something, you know. You could tell the importance of a certain decision, and that's the key, because the title of the song is The Decision, you know. And like, you could tell the importance because of the music, and it just really plays well with the cutscene, you know. Like, it plays so well, like, you know, when there's highs or lows, you know, and then eventually when the universe does reset, it just ends off with the music so good, you know. So that's one of the key aspects of it. Music is very important for Xenoblade, you know, and just the media in general, for games, movies, whatever. If you don't have good music, then, you know, your scene kind of falls apart. Not that it all hinges on music, but it is a very, very big part of it. And in this scene in particular, I think it does it really well, the music. But what else do I really love about it? Well, look, so this is the reason why this is my favorite cutscene of Xenoblade as a whole, is just because of the fact it was basically the cutscene that made you realize that every single thing from the past Xenoblade games, I guess besides Xenoblade X, but we'll talk about that later, but basically most of the other Xenoblade stuff was all connected. And, you know, nothing was the same after we saw this cutscene, you know? Some people might say different scenes are the best scenes of the Xenoblade franchise, and there's a lot of good scenes, you know? Even one more recently is the radio scene from Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed. But think about it this way. Without this scene, without the Xenoblade 2 Birth of the Universe cutscene, which confirmed that Xenoblade 1 and 2 were connected, we wouldn't have gotten the radio scene at all, which potentially, we don't even know what's going to happen with the radio scene yet, but it potentially hints that Xenoblade X, Xenosaga, and Xenogears may be connected as well in this multiverse type thing, but we don't know yet. But with this cutscene here in Xenoblade 2, that's what led to that radio scene, you know, in Xenoblade 3. It all started with this one, you know, and this was very mind-blowing to me, especially because I started playing Xenoblade 2. That was my first Xenoblade game technically, but I really didn't get that much into it. I got it because it was highly reviewed, you know, and I heard some things. Look, like, when I first got the game, I've heard things like, oh, Xenoblade 2 is like in an alternate universe, or like in a parallel universe with Xenoblade 1, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Because, look, this is what I thought. Most media, like most game media, movie media, like, they love to say, oh, this is just in an alternate universe, so they can do whatever they want. And I thought that was the case with Xenoblade 2, where, oh, they're just in parallel universes or whatever, and it's not going to be acknowledged in-game, you know, it's just said by the developers or the game makers, just so they could have an excuse to do something new with the franchise, but like still within the same universe, if that makes sense. But that was not the case at all when we got to this cutscene. So anyway, back to the story. So I couldn't really get into Xenoblade 2. I got Xenoblade 1 eventually after trying so hard to get into Xenoblade 2, and I played through Xenoblade 1. I loved it, and I figured, okay, let me go back to Xenoblade 2 and finish it this time. And I actually had a good time going forward with Xenoblade 2. You know, it was nice to see all these things that were references to Xenoblade 1, you know, or similarities, you know, but it was just nice to push through knowing that I really love Xenoblade 1, and I knew that Xenoblade 2 was good, you know, I just hadn't gotten into it in the past, but I just needed that extra push, that being Xenoblade 1, to help me realize how good of a game and how good of a series the Xenoblade franchise is. So when I got to, well, first of all, this cutscene, the Birth of the Universe cutscene, is hinted at when Rex touches the third Aegis sword or whatever. You see a glimpse of the thing with the earth being like, you know, reset or whatever. And when I first saw that, I'm like, wait a minute, is that from Xenoblade 1? Are they connected? Like, are they actually gonna acknowledge that this is a separate universe in game? No way, right? And I knew at this point that the architect, who is the person, Klaus, you know, who's the basically main character of this cutscene, and he also narrates the very end of it. I knew that he was played by Adam Howden, however you say his name, the guy that played Sulk and Zanza in Xenoblade 1. But I thought it was just a cameo thing. We actually do see this in Xenoblade 3 where Adam Howden plays the Nappan Sage or something. That's just a small little cameo thing. And I thought that was the same thing in Xenoblade 2 with the architect. You know, I didn't know his name was Klaus, actually. So when I first looked at the architect and saw his voice, I didn't think much of it because I'm like, oh, it's just a cameo from Xenoblade 1. But then, we get to this cutscene that plays at the very beginning of Chapter 10, and wow. You realize that, wait a minute, this looks a lot like the scene from Xenoblade 1. Of course, there's added details, you know, and I will be explaining that away in a bit. But there's like so much more going on, but it's still reminiscent of that Xenoblade 1 cutscene where Alvis shows you how the universe started, you know, with Galea and Klaus. But then, like, oh my god, you see, like, it was a big surprise when we got told, like, we were locked out by Professor Klaus, and I'm like, oh my god. So this is it from Xenoblade 1. This is really connected. And we saw basically most of the scene be the same after that point with Xenoblade 1. With like some differences, like Klaus's expression. He was a little bit more not evil like how he was in Xenoblade 1. He was a little bit more villainous in Xenoblade 1 depiction, but he was still mostly saying the same things and doing the same things as in Xenoblade 2. And you could easily explain that away with a few things. One, Alvis didn't have the full picture, like he was part of the Trinity processors, you know, all that stuff, and maybe he just had an incomplete image, you know, of what happened, but he did get all the details right with, you know, Klaus and Galea's, you know, arguments, not the rest of the context. Or two, Alvis just wanted to show Sulk the key details, because if he showed Sulk, like, about the Savior Right rebels and these robots and these other people, I'm sure Sulk will be like, what the heck does that have to do with anything? Alvis just wanted to show Sulk the main details to know that, okay, yeah, this is who Sansa was before he became Sansa, Klaus, you know? But yeah, so this scene, you could easily, you know, explain, like, okay, that's why, you know, there's differences, but it still makes sense overall. And I love that. I love that this scene, you know, showed us that, yes, these two games and, you know, the rest of the franchise is connected, and led way to stuff like Xenoblade 3, where we further see the two universes basically combined. You know, we see the hints that maybe the other Xeno games are connected too, you know, with the radio scene in Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed. And it's just really cool. Like, it's just a really cool scene, very epic as well, you know, and I love it so much for that. And I think that's why it's my favorite cutscene in all of Xenoblade games. Like, there's other great cutscenes, you know, that I love in the Xenoblade franchise, but this is the one that really, not to say that the other cutscenes, you know, were bad or didn't intrigue me, but this is the cutscene that was, like, really got me into Xenoblade as a whole, because it made me realize how big and how everything was connected from each other, you know, and made me realize how massive the like lore was, and it was so vindicating. Is that the right word? I don't know. But like, it was just so nice to see them acknowledge that this is a separate universe, a parallel universe in game, and we still see the ripple effects of this cutscene throughout the rest of the very end of Xenoblade 2, you know, where we see how Klaus, the architect, you know, he's split off between the architect and Zanza, and we even hear Sok say, "Today we use our power to fell a god." We hear that in Xenoblade 2, and at the same time that Zanza dies, that's when the architect starts to go. We see the ripple effects of what happens from at the end of Xenoblade 1 to Xenoblade 2, and it all started with this cutscene, you know, because it introduced us to the idea that, oh, everything is connected, you know. Lately, I could just ramble on about this cutscene for a while, but I think that's more than enough said. I really love it, and it's really what got me into Xenoblade, you know, lore theorizing, you know, and Xenoblade as a whole. Again, like, it was just so nice to see how, you know, it was acknowledged that this was, you know, this is all connected, you know, and not just like an offhanded throwaway comment from like a developer, like, oh yeah, they're parallel universes, but you don't see it in game. I've never seen a game do that, or like really even like a movie or TV show, you know. The closest thing I guess would be, I don't know, Marvel, DC, where they have alternate universes and then sometimes they cross over, you know, but like that's very rare. This was very vindicating, I think that's the right word, to see, at least in a game, you know, because it was very unique, at least in terms of the game medium, but probably in like the whole entertainment medium as well. But just as me, let me know what you think of this cutscene, or what you think is your favorite cutscene in all Xenoblade games. I miss doing a dedicated discussing Xenoblade video, you know, it's been a little while. Of course, I've been doing, you know, Xenoblade YouTube Shorts, you know, tier lists, all that stuff, but it's been a while since we've done a discussive video, and I missed it, you know. I will also get back to doing some live streams of Xenoblade very soon, you know. But yeah, I love the Xenoblade franchise, and I just wanted to share with you guys my favorite cutscene, you know. I also do have another video planned going over like my favorite cutscenes of each individual Xenoblade game, including the DLC. But I wanted to make a video just talking about this cutscene because it is my favorite, and probably for the video where I talk about all the cutscenes that I love from each individual game, I will mention this one, but like very briefly, you know, because I covered it in depth already. So be sure to look out for that video when that comes out eventually. I don't know when, but maybe soon. We'll see. But that's gonna be it for me, guys. Thank you, Nilos Edom, Damian Grace, Sparkly Brawler, and Scythe for becoming YouTube or Patreon members. Like, subscribe, please, on Xenoblade, and I'll catch you guys next time for more. Peace. Bye, everyone.